Hello, everybody out there in radio land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. This is a weekly news and talk radio program where we tell y'all what is actually going on from a working class perspective, talking about everything that's going on here in the city of Kalamazoo, the state of Michigan, the so-called United States, and the rest of the world from a working class perspective. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may be. Well, I think it's again, we're going to start today's show. How did it go? It's like a reminder card. It's like Wolf damage report. Um, it's, so yeah, there is going to be a little bit of that, but I do also how people are pushing back against this, week one of the Trump administration, which, I will say, just kind of going into this, this is gonna, this is, again, it's a big topic, and part of it is there has been this furious flurry of executive orders and like retrograde decisions from the administration. However, um, most of it is not, none of it is really unexpected. We spent a lot of time, last year's programs talking about Project 2025. And for anybody who's even kind of paying a passing attention to that, um, again, the news is certainly shocking, but it's not necessarily surprising. Um, and let's just kind of keep in mind that we kind of know we know what they are up to. Um, I think I was talking a little bit about this on my previous show. There was a light air of conspiracism going on around Inauguration Day, and one of the things that we do have, glass half full, an advantage on is that they have very thoroughly telegraphed exactly all of the horrible things that they are planning to do. Even today's announcement about freezing all federal funding to these kind of programs that help people. I'll be talking about that more in a minute here. Again, shocking but not surprising. This was literally part of their strategy guide going into this new administration. However, there are efforts, again, as I mentioned, to push back against what the administration is doing on several levels, as well as the broader culture overall that is trying to pivot towards this kind of late stage capitalism, overt open fascism. Um, and I think I'll start to, I want to give a shout out to Don Cooney, who was highlighted in WWMT. They kind of did a very quick article about him, and basically him kind of standing up and talking about trying to protect citizens in Kalamazoo from immigrations and customs enforcement. Tip of the hat to them. We've also got a developing story coming from Kalamazoo Township, which I know that does actually affect a lot of the students out here. That's kind of more towards the Ashtamo area. Um, Again, kind of on the periphery of the Kalamazoo area proper. Um, but there was a proposed resolution that was declare the township a quote unquote sanctuary community. Now let's run into some hiccups. Again, as of literally today, I read this article as soon as I woke up. But I wanted to update you on what's going on at the township level, especially as I know it affects a lot of my listeners. But what basically the resolution would include a non-discrimination ordinance update, a immigration enforcement ordinance creation, a resolution recognizing the citizenship of all individuals born in the United States, kind of a direct rebuke to Trump's executive order last week, and a resolution recognizing and protecting people of all gender identities and sexual orientations, which again is kind of a direct rebuke to that Trump's executive order from last week, trying to say there's only two genders. Or, I mean, there's been a lot of jokes online the way it's written. It's the gender you had at conception, which everybody starts female, and a lot of people have been joking around. It's like, oh, the U.S. government just said we're all women. Of course, yes, we can make fun a little bit of how stupid the fascist overlords are, but it doesn't make it any less serious. Again, all of these we're going to be part of this resolution. And I do want to say they're being cautious about it. It isn't necessarily being shot down because of like overt bigotry, but an exercise of caution, which um, it may or may not be excessive. I kind of, y'all can decide. I will kind of tell you what's going on. From here's kind of just the main bullet points from the article. This is from Audrey Whitaker. Headline is Kalamazoo Township pumps brakes on response to Trump orders. And one of the trustees, Craig Sherwood, said, "We need more time to consider this. As a board, we need to do more fact finding, and we need to hear from our community. The board is comprised of 6 Democrats and 1 Republican, and they voted 5-1 to table the 4 proposed measures during its 7 p.m. Meeting. Trustee Ashley Glass was not present. So again, just tabling it. They're not killing it outright. Um, Goes on to say Combs was the only board member to vote against removing the items from the agenda. He's new to the supervisor role and also serves as the Kalamazoo County Democratic Party vice chair. So that is an interesting development. Again, somebody from the local Democratic Party is voting against it. They did say, kind of to respond to their vote, they need to establish clear policies and signal to residents that their identity is recognized in the township. They would ensure that business in the township would continue as usual. Um, and they said the consequences of taking the proposed actions are unknown. Combs said previously. And the context of this is that the Department of Justice is basically being weaponized to investigate government officials and municipalities that are not complying with these executive orders. And there is concern, and this was quoted from former trustee Stephen Luty, that it could jeopardize federal funding for major projects. Kalamazoo County Commissioner Jen Strebs also noted they said on this topic, moving too quickly could also put a target on the very people officials are trying to help. And what you're kind of talking about that is, as we've seen in the past, especially like kind of the conservative media uh, ecosphere, um, they have a tendency to like hyper focus on municipalities that are somehow acting or behaving poorly on these cultural wedge issues. We did an episode a couple years ago, if you remember, about how Tucker Carlson of all people called out the Kalamazoo City Commission. And Commissioner Chris Bradell, I think in particular, for this whole discourse about uh, public defecation and urination public, and whether what level of crime it should be. Basically, if the whole context of it was decriminalizing those offenses, so people don't have to have it on the record through jail time, which I think is necessarily a good thing. But like again, it kind of shows the extent to which kind of the right wing media apparatus can be weaponized against municipalities, and it sounds like there's at least some kind of awareness of that. Um, I will say, these are very unprecedented times, and I certainly understand the degree of caution that the Kalamazoo Township Board is having approaching to this, wanting to kind of, dot their I's and cross their T's and such. But I would also remind them and all our listeners, these are fairly unprecedented times. And On a moral level, a lot of municipalities, we've seen, Chicago public schools, folks in Newark, having to draw a line in the sand and take a stand based not necessarily on fear of reprisal or what is legal, but what is morally correct. So if you want to read that article for yourself, you can find that on MLive. That is Kalamazoo Township pumps brakes on response to Trump orders, but it does sound like there is something in the works. And again, if you live in Kalamazoo Township, I would encourage people contact your commissioners. Let them know how you feel about this. Public pressure is probably going to be the thing that makes or breaks a resolution like this. Well, it looks like we're about to be joined by one of my co-hosts here. Let's see, Lawrence, how are you doing today?
Yo, I'm good, brother. On my lunch break. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? How are you?
oh, oh, no, I'm doing pretty well, considering, the horrors as as we were talking about. Um, well, how are you doing during, again, your first week? Trump is back in office, and we've seen a lot of trepidation. We've seen a lot of people being fearful. We've seen just a lot of absolutely wild, um, not necessarily unexpected, but wild nonetheless stuff coming out of the administration. Um, so I like again, how are you feeling about this first week?
Um, I feel about this first week what I expected. The man in Project 2025 and those fans over there told you what they were gonna do, right? Civil rights legislation that was worked on during LBJ's presidency, stuff that took decades, centuries to try to pass through an executive order has been erased. Poof. It's been Thanos snapped because of this president. Uh, 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 Protections that we were looking for to help those in marginalized communities, like the trans community and other communities, uh, Latino communities, immigrant communities, and others, are now not just being suppressed but actively attacked. While Trump has fired the watchdogs of major organizations that were supposed to monitor waste, fraud, and abuse, all of those regulators, he's fired within the first week, even though they're supposed to have a month's notice ahead of time. Everything that they said they wanted to do, everything that Project 2025 talked about, everything when it comes to consolidating power and going after those that they thought that was their political opponents, they've been doing in spades. So as the great poet Maya Angelou once said, when someone tells you who they are, believe them.
Yeah,
So
no,
for
100%. Yeah.
yeah. So
Uh,
for all the folks that was like, I just want my eggs to be cheaper, or hey man, the tariffs are gonna help bring jobs back, or help stimulate the economy. That's going to help us. No, they're going to rob us, and civil liberties that your fellow Americans have been fighting for are going to be snuffed out. That's what's happened. That's what's going on.
yeah, absolutely. And you even again, it's like playing whack-a-mole, trying to kind of keep track of all these developments. I think early this morning, you had Trump saying he's going to pause all federal funding for most programs that are designed to help people. We're talking about WIC, SNAP, I think colloquially known as food stamps, many other programs. The only exemption he's really given is Social Security. Um, and just as an aside, it is very interesting. And again, this is a very like breaking story. We still don't know the overall ramifications, what all programs it's going to affect. Because again, it's written to the exec. This order is written and very ambiguously. But we do know at the very least, like this could affect like billions of dollars worth of aid that goes to working class people, and that working class people on both sides of the aisle. Reminder: most SNAP benefits actually go to areas that disproportionately vote Republican.
Yeah,
Um, so, one thing though that I just has been really interesting seeing from the media response is a lot of people at the top of the Democratic Party, and I mean this goes back to some of the reasons they lost the election here, man. So Chuck Schumer said, they say this is only temporary, but no one should believe that. Donald Trump must direct his administration to reverse course immediately, and taxpayers' money should be distributed to the people. Congress approved these investments; they are not optional; they are the law. And what we see, Democratic Senator Patty Murray said the scope of what you're ordering is breathtaking, unprecedented, and the devastating consequences. Uh, and there's been a lot of op-eds from legacy media focusing on how this is breaking democratic norms, how Trump is trying to take power away from Congress and their discretion over spending. And these things are true, but you have to look at if you look at the actual substance of what he's doing, I think you're kind of burying the lead. Like this is overt class warfare. It is again like strip mining the working class from the very meager social safety nets that people have. And again, there's a lot of discussion about how like, oh, this might get overturned in the courts or whatever, but that's still it's how long is that going to take, and how long are people going to be without he's engineering an economic crisis, and it is really just putting a thumb in the eye towards a lot of working class Americans, and say it's like and I guess the only thing I'm necessarily surprised about is again Trump's biggest constituency are kind of more like bougie petty bourgeois white folks in the suburbs. Just I'm saying that colloquially, but like you look at
yeah.
the data, that's how it pans out. But I mean, he does.
You
There are
can't say that, you cannot say that this election. You can't say
was
that
that
this election. This election, the majority of voters that voted for him were people who made less than $50,000 a year. And for
yeah
those who listen to our podcast, that is working class poor folks. That's working class poor.
yeah.
And the issue that you have is it goes back to I think it was I forgot what president that said it. I was gonna go on. I was gonna give it a thing, but
By the way,
the
yeah, thanks for correcting me. Like I was under the impression that was still. I know that a lot more people in the working class voted for him this election than the last one,
so
right?
so
But
so when it was the Emerson Pew Research and another polling outlet um did a breakdown of who voted for 47, and the people who made less than $50,000 a year overwhelmingly voted for uh Trump, Vance. People who made more than $100,000 or more voted for Harris, and that should tell you that tells you the tale of the tape. There are more people in this country who makes less than $100,000 a year, or makes less. Well, the people who made 50,000 to 100,000, that that split somewhat evenly. But everyone who made less than $50,000 or more all voted for Trump. I mean, vote in proportionately, disproportionately voted for Trump. So more people, working class, poor people, voted for the charlatan. They voted for change. They wanted change, and they were in a populist mood. It's something that we talk about all the time on this show. That the American people want populist change. They are either going to get it from the right wing, or they're either going to get it from the right wing, or they're going to get it from the left. And the left the Democratic establishment has worked overtime to kill that type of to snuff out that type of politics from their ranks. They have done everything in their power to make sure that populist progressive ideology is not a thing that can be supported. Meanwhile, on the right, they will adopt populist rhetoric while keeping right wing establishment oligarchy
Hmm.
because they are funded by those same donors. It is it's what's amazing to me when we look at like all the executive orders that's gone through, all the people that was at the inauguration, the same legacy media that bent over backwards to serve the establishment of the Democratic Party and also the establishment of the Republican Party have now also bent a knee to Trump. Uh, Political pundits that were critics of Trump, like on CNN, are now being moved to the midnight slot for their show. Steve Kornacki and others. Um, MSNBC is a ship without a rudder because they're bringing back Rachel Maddow because they don't have any stars on the show or anybody on the show that's actually worth their weight in salt. They have Simone Sanders and some other people that were pundits and talking heads for Joe Biden and VP Harris. There is when it comes to legacy media, the thing that makes me the most upset is that they're supposed to be the watchdogs of the powerful, and that a lot of them, especially legacy media and also in new media as well, in this type of stuff that we are doing, they have bent a knee to MAGA. They have bent a knee, and they are not being critical. They are choosing to appease the Mad King. Because now the Supreme Court basically saying the Mad King doesn't have any guardrails. He can go mask off. And that's basically what we've seen. And it bothers me as someone who's in this media space like you are, like we are, to see that. Not just not just CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. We know that they kiss the boots of Fortune 500 companies, but also, new media, people like Joe Rogan, people like people in other media figures in new media, also not being critical, not asking tough questions, but kissing the powerful cheeks, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking about this article from the New York Times a lot. So their headline is "Goodbye Resistance." Um, excuse me, "Goodbye Resistance." Where has the era of hyperpolitics is over, and the whole thesis of the article is that because things don't look exactly like they did 4 years or not 4 years ago. No, yeah, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Yeah, time is fake because things don't look exactly like they did then, like they did during the first Trump administration, and particularly because, as you just mentioned, a lot of these erstwhile liberal establishment institutions are bending the knee. The whole thesis of the article is like, politics are going to be normal again, and obviously anybody who's paying attention, politics as we know it are entering uncharted territory, and to have a thesis like that, because we don't see liberal commentators on television, doing the same kind of like symbolic resistance stuff, that we're entering a more normal era, and obviously, if you listen to our show and if you kind of listen to the evidence of your eyes and ears, we're entering an era of late stage capitalism where things are really crumbling into overt fascism, like we've seen before historically. These historical patterns emerge time and time again, and again, often with like the same chain of events. An empire or a big state is entering a time of turmoil. A left wing movement tries to gain traction, and usually one of two things can happen. That movement is given some concessions, i.e., like FDR, or that movement is squashed, and the liberals end up ceding that territory to an overt fascist. That's what happened in Weimar Germany, and that's what's happening right now with Donald Trump. And again, it kind of, going looping back to what I was kind of talking about at the beginning, the way the more the legacy media is framing the story today about Trump freezing all the federal programs is like, oh, this is a break on norms. This is him trying to, gather executive power, which the other side of it is this is exactly the kind of like class warfare prescribed in like Project 2025, that sort of thing. You have a liberal legacy media that is, they're really showing themselves as completely detached from what is going on the ground, because to them what resistance looks like is uh you know uh commentators on CNN writing, Orange Man bad articles. It's not the actual resistance that's going on the ground, which again, the actual resistance to Trump is taking different forms, but it is just as fierce as ever. I was at a DSA meeting last week, and it was like standing room only. People are fired up and they are getting involved, but it's definitely not something that, kind of these elite liberal prognosticators would recognize, because it's again, it's not part of their class. A lot of the liberal elites have collectively decided we're going to work with the Trump administration and go back to brunch. Whereas you now see even a lot of the more kind of middle class, working class liberals I've been noticing since Trump got inaugurated they are starting to recognize that the emperor has no clothes, that again, a lot of these elite institutions and the people in them are not really looking out for them. They are the good cop to the bad cop that is the Trump administration. And, again, even like a lot of the politicians in the Democratic Party are not inspiring a lot of confidence. I was talking with my wife before I got on the show about something Hakeem Jeffries said. He is the head of the House. He took Nancy Pelosi's old job. And he said something to the effect of presidents come and go, but God sits on the throne. And that is not the right message for the times we are living through. That is not a fighting message. That's like a weird concessionary thing you say when you don't have any like material things to give your constituency. And that's certainly not no like liberation theology, that's for sure. Um,
That is some of the most weak sauce things that's one of the most weak sauce things I can think of. Like a proper response that you want to have. I don't know if you saw the response that AOC and Bernie did. Like Bernie gave a response about he called out CNN and mainstream media to their face about how y'all capitulated and how y'all have bent the knee to the powerful, because a lot of those corporations and the owners of those corporations are y'all donors. They advertise on your shows. You have a financial interest to to keep the system as it is. This is why it doesn't shock me when I see uh certain people in the media say, "Hey, we need to give Trump a chance." Give Trump a chance to do what? To do what? Because because we've already seen what he did the first 4 years, and we've already seen what he's done in the first week. He has turned precedent that has been set in this country since the 1960s. He has attacked uh, uh, immigrants that has come to this country, if they have done crimes or not done crimes or whatever. Like if ICE agents has already started going into the schools here in our city of Kalamazoo, going after people. Now look, if and this is something that for the liberal part of this audience, they're probably gonna be upset with me about, and I get it. But look, if the agent if if the people that are being rounded up are career criminals, as in criminals that have done multiple crimes, and depending on the crime, like if they done violent crime and those people are the ones who are being deported, you can make an argument of, hey, they still deserve their due process because we have a system of justice.
Lawrence, I think we lost you. Are you still there? Lawrence. Yeah, I think we lost connection with him. Oh,
They
there's
got the app. They got the app. They got the oh, did I cut out?
you just for a second, but go
Okay.
ahead.
No, but I'm saying you have asylum seekers who got the application. They got the app on the phone. They were waiting their turn. They were doing everything that the system said for them to do, to now be told, nah, y'all good. Reneged on y'all asylum. That is when you get outraged. Hey, the people who said Trump is anti-war, threatening Mexico or threatening Greenland and Iceland, saying that you want to occupy that the Canada's president is more of the governor because you want to take over Canada as well. These are not the things that we capitulate to. Like, I have no problem with certain segments of the left saying we need to reach out to other people who are not just, because we just can't double down and talk to our own selves. We need to reach out to other people who don't think like us. Cool. There are certain lines though. There are certain lines that I draw a line in the sand in that no, they are not like us. When this president is threatening tariffs and trade wars on countries that will then backlash and make it more expensive for the average American, no, that means he's harming the people he's supposed to be protecting. If we're talking about immigrants who are violent criminals that you're deporting, cool. But when you have people who have been trying to seek asylum, or people who's been doing the process, and they're being swept up and thrown in ICE facilities, ICE cages, and being deported, no, we do not capitulate to that. That's not something to celebrate or be okay about. And these are things that's been happening. The collateral damage of his orders are going to have unforeseen ramifications. And it's just the first week. It's just the first few weeks. It's just the first few weeks. It's
Yeah.
about to get a whole lot worse before it gets better.
No, absolutely. And I think glass half full. If you want to get involved, you are in good company. I've been seeing this upsurge of energy that it's actually even a little different than 2017 when Trump was inaugurated the first time, because I'm seeing not only this energy from a lot of people who are just disgusted with Trump, but disgusted overall with the whole system, but with the way the Democrats are capitulating to Trump, the way they ran their campaign, where they basically they fed us to the fascists so that they could maintain a genocide in Gaza, which again, Trump doesn't really show signs of abating. He doesn't seem to care. He seems to be more concerned with how he can sell property development in the Gaza Strip, which
Oh,
may require a bit of ethnic cleansing, but
he
that's
literally said he wants his son-in-law to start selling the beachfront property. They're going to cleanse Gaza. Gaza's GG. I just want everybody to understand. That's a wrap. And for those who are on the left, like us, like me, and others, saying, hey, I know you don't like Biden. I know you don't like Harris. I can't tell you to vote for people who are sending money to bomb brown and black people, innocent brown and black people in other countries. I get that. But if Trump gets in, it's going to be worse. This is the worst. This was the worst.
Yep,
Like,
and
we
he's
tried to tell
also
y'all.
he's given Israel a license to thoroughly colonize the West Bank. For those who didn't know, Biden, at least again, it was a very minimal thing, but he put sanctions against settlers, Israeli settlers in the West Bank, trying to prevent them from taking illegally seizing land. And again, that was kind of like the devil in the details. Trump was able to kind of twist Netanyahu's arm on the ceasefire by agreeing to basically give the settler colonialists in the West Bank carte blanche to violently seize territory. I mean, that's something we're seeing right now. We've seen headlines of them deploying very Gaza-like tactics in the West Bank in order to yoink houses and settlements from people. Yeah, so again, it's
The reason why a lot of the Democrats lost, and one of the reasons why there was a recent poll that came out was because of Gaza. The capitulation to Bibi Netanyahu, and it wasn't like Netanyahu was holding his tongue. He said he wanted Trump to win so that they can have carte blanche to do what they're doing now, which is ethnically cleansing a land, to steal land that's not theirs, to do the colonizer thing, right? The issue that I have is that, and also there's a lot of it we can't do anything about. We can protest, we can boycott, divest, and sanction, and that's from us organizing, strategizing, and that's what the people can do. Because stop shopping at companies that still operate in the Gaza Strip. Stop participating in organizations and withhold your dollars from corporations that help with Israel and their with the Israeli state, right? That's what
Mhm.
we can do. That's what we can do.
I want to underscore what you just said too. To quote the great social justice activist Kwame Ture, they once said, "In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent has to have a conscience. The United States government has none." And I think what I want to emphasize is a lot of what has been going on the previous year, as far as Gaza goes, is again protests, encampments, nonviolent civil disobedience. And what I want to emphasize is that piece you said there, economic pressure. Um, I think really what needs to happen in the next few months is we really need to re-strategize about how can we make these people hurt economically, because it's the only language these people understand. They don't have a conscience. They don't care about kids getting genocided. Now, if they start making less money, and again, some of that was going on last year. There were some really great boycott campaigns going on. Again, it's McDonald's, Starbucks, etc. But I really think that's where the energy needs to go, especially in the wake of what's going on in the West Bank and in the way that they're basically going to try to colonize Gaza. Is people who've been paying attention to this through the last year. Um, you know, Biden wasn't going to do crap. Trump certainly isn't. So what we need to do is hit these people on their bottom line, make them afraid of losing some money, some serious money, because that's really the only language these people understand. Is if I'm going to be economically hurt by pursuing this, then I might that's a big hope for me as we move forward in the way the U.S. labor movement
What
is developing.
I
I
mean,
really hope it synthesizes with these kind of foreign policy issues, because that will be the way we can really bring a stop to a lot of these things if we can incorporate that into like the general strike actions, etc.
yeah, and it works. That Why do you think that in 26 states it's illegal for you to boycott Israel? Why do you think that they've made it a part of state doctrine that if you participate in boycotts, divestments, or sanctions, that the government of the state that you are in, will cut your federal funding. If you are bold enough to say, I don't support another country.
Yeah. And furthermore, I'm
That,
gonna
that
boycott companies that do business with them.
yeah. So outside of it being a First Amendment issue, it is it is anti-American in many ways. And it's those type of policies, and it's those type of issues that we have to focus on. Because stripping away our rights, the rights that we have been fighting for, our ancestors have fought for, they are doing, and they're doing gleefully. And please remember, those that have been cheering this on, or those who are, you're gonna have the troglodytes that's been cheering this on, the Tucker Carlsons, the Nick Fuenteses, right? But also the wave riders, the narrative humpers, right? The Joe Rogans and others, who are siding on the bandwagon. Those people also need to be held accountable. And when I say held accountable, as in those people are also the people who've been telling you or have been lying to you this entire time. Don't forget that. And that we collectively need to come together and take action to try to mitigate some of this harm. Like we said, brace for impact a while ago when he won, but we really have to do it now.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
I have to go, but peace, love, and everything. There's a couple other stories that I do want to talk about, but we'll do that in a clip probably later this week.
all right, sounds good, Lawrence. Thanks for joining us. I'm gonna kind of I have a parting thought on that, and I just wanted to emphasize, especially to some of the more liberal friends who are listening to the show today, and even some of the working class conservatives, maybe that voted for Trump. You're going to be finding out very soon how much he actually cares about you. But spoiler alert, does not. So,
Like
but
when you think about his tax cuts, when you think about his tax cuts before, the same ones that they're trying to make permanent now, how much of that money went to you? Studies showed only about $70 went to those who made less than 50,000 who made less than $50,000 a year. But you want to know who made out? You know, his donors. People who made a million plus. Oh, they got they made bank. They made bank on the backs of your labor. I want you to remember that because
oh
they're
yeah,
going to do it again.
and look at this executive order today. It's worth reminding folks that the majority of SNAP benefit recipients actually live in poor rural red areas that vote heavily Republican. So again, it is sticking a thumb into a lot of the same people who got him elected. And
He
what we
doesn't
are,
care. He
yeah,
doesn't care.
no, he does not.
His okay. Okay. The perfect allegory. Elon Musk did a Nazi salute. Some of the richest people in the world at his inauguration was sitting front row. They sat in front of his cabinet picks. The people who financed his election had better seats at his inauguration than his cabinet picks, than the people who are responsible for policy that's going to be affecting your lives on the regular. They didn't, they weren't, they were not closer to the president than the people who gave him money.
Yep. And keep in mind, this is a lot of like the administration just kind of acting with this kind of impunity. Something that kind of got lost in the chaos last week that Elon Musk said that I thought was really revealing in a way, even make more so than the Nazi salute, was him. He tweeted something to the effect of like, we all know that the government is run by the rich. We all know the US is an oligarchy. Why don't we let's just cut out the middleman? He's kind of just like, let's just stop this pretense of democracy. Just have rich people run things without having these politicians kind of stand in between, putting this pretense of democracy. And that's where we're at. Donald Trump is doing this executive order that again affects the people who voted for him because to his mind and the mind of his the people in his orbit, democracy's done. It's done. We are at that stage. It is ruled by the super rich. It is the that old school fascism, the synthesis of the government and corporations. In their minds, that's where we're at. And their response to the working people who maybe are going to be a little upset that they're going to be struggling is, what are you going to do about it? But it's like, I'm gonna make a Nazi salute at the inauguration. What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? And we've got a few years left, folks. We gotta. I'm gonna say it
Oh,
is.
oh no,
It
no,
is.
and and also groups like the ADL, groups
Oh Lord.
and groups like ADL, groups that had legitimacy. When you when you play nice with these fascists, you lose legitimacy. You're telling me, okay, Kyrie Irving shared the documentary on Amazon that had anti-Semitic stuff in it. You made him go to sensitive you wanted him and suggested him that he goes to sensitivity training, that he learns about the Holocaust. Kanye West, and all his crazy stuff. Y'all, y'all went after him when he said anti-Semitic stuff. You called the ADL called college students who protested against the genocide, saying they're anti-Semitic. But when one of the richest people in the world, one of the richest men in the world, does the Nazi salute, does the Heil Hitler, y'all say it's just a weird gesture. You have lost all credibility when you will go after those that you see are lesser in power. And then when the powerful does something that you cannot deny, you try to lie to people's faces. And afterwards, you finally call him out when he doubles down on Twitter, on X, joking around with Nazi general names and Nazi in camps. Like, come on, dog. Come on, dog. And for everybody who is like, hey man, he was just trolling. That free speech. He's just trolling. He knew he was just going to get headlines. Okay, fair enough. You think that's just trolling? How about you do that at work? You do
Yeah.
that at your job. Go
Mhm.
do that. Go do that. Go do that in a public place. Film yourself doing that online and see what happens to you. Like, come on, dog. We're not doing that. We're not doing that for the next 4 years. I promise you, we won't.
Yeah. So it's kind of looping back to what I was saying. Um, to my liberal friends who are listening to this, to even some of the people who voted for Trump who are going to be getting getting some full life consequences in a sec. Um, the response to this is again the Democrats are not coming to the rescue. They just are not. Um, we had we had an opportunity. We had an off ramp um, twice in the last 10 years. This is a different to stop fascism. Pull this lever. That was the Bernie Sanders switch, and that was sabotaged twice. So this, whether we like it or not, this is the timeline that we are in. So there's no the institutions have either are actively attacking us or have abandoned us, saying, "Oh, well, we'll work with Trump and then go out to brunch." That is where the institutions are at. We are the ones we've been waiting for. That's all that's left, folks. We have to build collective power. And I know I've been saying this since we started our show in 2016, but again, that is the only way out. The only way out of this. And if rather whether we're going to have 4, 8, 12, 20 more years of this fascist nonsense, the only thing that is going to stop it is the building collective power with the people, because liberalism is dead. Like there's a lot of prognosticators. It's like and for whatever elections we see, it's going to be like a weekend at Bernie's style thing going on. I mean, I've heard some people saying trying to push like AOC to run for president in 4 years. Whether it'll even be possible for people to win an election in this country at that point is an open
Oh no.
question.
Oh, Doc. I don't know if you saw. I'm sorry to interrupt. Uh, in 4 years, they're trying to have Trump run again. I don't know if
Oh,
you
that's
saw the
true. Yes.
Republican. I don't know if you saw the Republican leader in I think it was either in the Senate or in the House. Um, they were trying to make an amendment that only presidents, and this is why it was so naked and so just out of this world. Only presidents that has not served 2 consecutive terms can run for president again. That's the amendment that they want to have, codified into law. Like as and they were saying it just so that you are clear that President Obama cannot run again. And I want to
Actually,
remind
I
everybody.
made I made a prediction about this on Hatebook or Meta or whatever you want to call it these days. So here's my prediction. So they would need a majority to pass this amendment. They would need Democratic buy-in. So
They would need
here's the
13.
potential
They would
future.
need 13. They would need 13 Democratic states to
So
ratify the Constitution
they
to make
change
that a
it.
thing.
So here's what they're going to do. They're going to pass the amendment. They're going to change it. They're going to offer the Democrats a bone. They're going to say, okay, anybody could run for a third term. So they're excited. They're like, ooh, we can get Obama to run again. That's going to be great. Fast forward a few years, Donald Trump dies in office after choking on a Big Mac. Vance, his polling is just terrible. So they're going to replace Donald Trump with a coal-powered AI that
I
was fed
cannot.
all of Donald Trump's speeches.
I
Somehow it's
cannot.
even more incoherent than Trump himself. Obama is going to decline to run. He'd prefer to spend some more time parasailing. And the coal powered Donald Trump AI is going to win the 2028 election against Pete Buttigieg by 2 electoral votes.
I
Uh,
cannot. No, I did. Okay, so this is the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Because I really have to go. So I really gotta get back to work. Here's the thing. The fact that the Democratic Party lost to this game show buffoon twice.
Twice,
No,
two
actually,
times.
more than no. No, the establishment of the Democratic Party has lost more. It officially has lost twice, but Hillary lost, Joe lost because he had to drop out because his polling showed that he would have got landslided for over 400 electoral votes, right? Kamala lost. So that's three. That's three different L's that this administration has taken by this carnival barker. And I shouldn't say carnival barker because like the carnival is actually organized and they actually understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry
Uh,
for carnivals. This is just buffoon. In that you we cannot get we cannot get our politicians to do things for the American people and then consistently brag about doing these things, consistently advertise that you've done these things, show how it positively affected the American people. The lack of selling of doing a thing and then selling its accomplishments is A and B of what a politician is supposed to do, and our politicians have not done that. The ones supposed to represent our values fail at that in spectacular fashions. It bothers me to my core that yeah, people like AOC, people like John Stewart, Nina Turner. Nina Turner would I would love to see Nina Turner run. right? Like I didn't like Dr. Cornel West running as an independent. I would have loved to see him run as a Democrat and then take over the party because that's what needs to happen. The Justice Democrats were supposed to be the Tea Party of the left, and some of them capitulated. And I'm gonna keep it real about that. AOC and some of them uh capitulated to Mama Bear. And
Mama
as
Bear.
Mama Bear and the rest of that group of people, and it's not just the progressive caucus that also capitulated. I'm talking about the black caucus as well. They also capitulate as well because they also take the same donor money. The reason why you don't see legacy media, you see legacy media being told in their anchors to not criticize Trump as harshly. But the reason why you hear that very flaccid response by Hakeem Jeffries. The reason why a lot of those leadership are not going hard in the paint like we are is because their paychecks are fine. They'll be fine. Their paychecks are fine. Their families are fine. They're not the ones that's going to have to worry about if their insurance company is going to cancel their prescription or tell them that they need prior authorization before they can get their medicine and delay their medicine uh, for weeks. They don't have to worry about if their family is going to be covered. They're not going to worry about if the lights are going to stay on. They're not worried about what the grocery bill is. But we do. This is why it hits different for us, and this is why we have to take action. Because when we take action, the system will be better. But the system is only will be better if we choose to take action. If we're choosing to just be like, hey, we're just gonna let the chips fall where they may, well, those who are holding the chips are holding them for themselves, and it will be in their favor.
Yes, absolutely.
But but anyway, I really gotta go. All right, love y'all.
All
Bye.
right. Okay. See you, Lawrence. You have a good one. I think we're going to take a quick little break. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo or online at widerfm.org. You can also find the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast on most podcasting apps. Don't forget, you can find us on social media, Facebook and YouTube. Keep your dial locked. This is Media Cyphers, your only source for political revolution. Hello again, everybody out there in radio land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo or online at widerfm.org. So, if you're just joining us, we are me and Lawrence just got done kind of talking about kind of the state of legacy media going into Trump, his flurry of executive orders, kind of summing up uh, a damage report of week one. There's a couple other topics I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive on, and before we really go into that, I wanted to highlight some incredible coverage from our friends over at Now Kalamazoo and WMUK. They did a really incredible investigative report about the living conditions over at Fox Ridge Apartments. It's written by Jesse Phillips and it's published on January 21st. Um, and I will link to all of those in the show notes. But again, it really talks about an important subject about how, particularly for a lot of lower income folks here in the Kalamazoo area, they are left with really terrible options with deplorable living conditions. And again, you can find the investigative report from Now Kalamazoo on their website, as well as listening in to WMUK's piece of that on their website. We will link to all of that in the show notes. But yeah, just definitely wanting to highlight some like top tier local journalism going on. Tip of my hats to Now Kalamazoo and WMUK for putting that piece together. Also, I wanted to do some local coverage, and I wanted to talk a little bit about ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and of course the ongoing ICE raids that are going on. So there's a kind of two pieces to this I want to highlight. One is there are very tangible things you can do to address what is going on with this increase in ICE raids. Um, we've got local organizations here, El Concilio Kalamazoo, which works with immigrant populations, Justice for Our Neighbors. Those are just like two local organizations I can think about off the top of my head who are doing that very important work. I did want to address something. I've been seeing a lot of stuff in my timeline and among my friends. Things like, ICE is in Kalamazoo, ICE is in Southwest Michigan, ICE is in Ann Arbor, kind of thing. And I want people to be kind of careful. I know we all want to look out for our neighbors, but it's better to be specific. And just saying something that vague can cause undue panic. There was a picture going around social media of a Homeland Security vehicle that was like, "Oh, ICE is here. They're on the corner at such and such," and that actually wasn't ICE. They were related to Federal Protective Service. Um, and just a couple thoughts that I had is, if you see an ICE agent, it's not enough to just say, "Hey, they're here." Um, Document it with concrete evidence. This comes from El Concilio themselves. Take videos or photos that show what is happening, write down the time, the exact location, detailed description of the event or the vehicles present. Check with several people if they also witnessed the same before sharing information. Remember, the purpose is to keep our community well informed and prevent fear from spreading unnecessarily. We also remind you of the importance of knowing your rights. You have the right to remain silent. They are not required to open a door unless they're shown a warrant signed by a judge, and everyone has a right to an attorney. And again, ICE is known to show like these kind of provisional warrants that actually do not have that authority. That warrant has to be signed by a judge. Um, I'd also just remind people to, again, ICE is in Kalamazoo is not necessarily helpful because to be frank, ICE has been in Kalamazoo, folks. Michigan is technically a border state. ICE, their primary jurisdiction is within 150 miles of the border because Michigan is surrounded by the lakes. That means our entire state is a quote unquote border zone. So ICE has been operating here for a while. And I can think back to the first Trump administration and try to give people a little bit of advice. Um, Keep in mind, this has been an ongoing, this terror that our immigrant community is feeling has been an ongoing problem. Technically, more people were deported under Biden than they were under Trump. And it's important to want to be helpful and protect our neighbors, but it's also important to do it the right way. And the right way to do it is to, again, be specific, to check your facts, to build relationships with our neighbors. So, again, the people who need to be informed get informed. And for those of us who have the privilege to do so, challenging ICE agents when they pop up in town, that's very important. Um, but again, doing it the right way and also just remembering, this is about making sure people in harm's way can get out of harm's way. Um, and I recall a few years ago under the first Trump administration, it's one thing to say it's like, well, people get deported under Democrats too. And certainly the tenor of anti-immigrant rhetoric coming from the Democratic Party in the last election was utterly shameful and not really based in fact. But again, there is a certain vindictiveness, a certain deliberate nature of trying to terrorize communities that has happened historically when Trump's in charge. And I will say from my own personal history, I think back to 2017, 2018, the ways that the community responded to ICE that were rather effective. You know, if you heard ICE was posted up somewhere, maybe they were over at like Town and Country in the Edison neighborhood or somewhere else. The way people responded, it was again to gather, to make a lot of noise, to make it difficult to do their job, which is to kidnap people. So again, what a lot of that was getting specific information. Where are they? What are they doing? If they're particularly if they're posted up in an area to try to like intimidate people, um, giving them a not so rude or not so kind welcome, and again drawing attention to them. That often was enough to keep the community safe. For people who are more interested in the nuts and bolts of how, kind of resistance to that works, I want to let you know there is going to be a rapid response training up in Grand Rapids that is coming up in February on the 15th. And I'm not going to say too many details about it on air, but if y'all are interested, send us a private message. You can find us on Facebook or email us at mediacyphers@gmail.com. We can give you the details. I know this is something that people are really, again, up in arms about. So we will give you the details to kind of find out how you can get involved. With that, I actually wanted to transition into an article from Left Voice, speaking about the relationship between resistance to ICE and campus activism. This is written by Olivia Wood, published on January 25th. ICE off campus. College students and workers must unite against right-wing attacks. Hours after retaking office, Donald Trump signed roughly 200 executive orders and memoranda, many of which deal with immigration policy and immigration and customs enforcement. Has been preparing for mass deportation raids in many major cities. Almost immediately after the inauguration, Customs and Border Protection disabled asylum related functions on its scheduling app, canceling all asylum appointees scheduled for the remainder of Inauguration Day and preventing people from scheduling new ones. The Trump administration aims to scapegoat immigrants for the country's problems, create a culture of fear among immigrants, and divide the working class along nationalist lines. These executive orders will impact U.S. college students in a variety of ways. Many universities issued warnings to international students, recommending those who travel out of the country over winter break make every possible effort to return to the United States before the inauguration, in case new policies or emboldened border officers under the new administration make it difficult for students to return in time for their classes. Cornell University's guidance specifically named 13 countries targeted during Trump's first administration and speculated that India and China could also be likely additions to such a list. While a new travel ban was not implemented on day one of Trump's executive orders directs members of the cabinet to recommend within the next 60 days a list of countries from which to ban immigration. International students already experience hardships in their studies compared to their domestic counterparts, including paying out of state tuition rates even if they meet residency requirements applied to domestic students and being forbidden from working off campus. Other student groups specifically under threat from Trumpian immigration policies include undocumented students, including those with DACA status, those with temporary protective status, students who are claiming asylum, and students who are U.S. citizens but have undocumented family members. For instance, some student support organizations like the National College Attainment Network are cautioning new college students from mixed immigration status families to consider not filing for federal financial aid this year, out of concern that family information they submit in their application might be shared with immigration agencies. It also remains to be seen what immigration policies or other policies affecting education, such as anti DEI decrees, Trump might attempt to enact using the threat of withholding federal funding from colleges and universities. Regardless of how they end up actually being affected by new policies, these students live in fear of what might happen to them and their loved ones, that they will lose their protected status, or that they or their loved ones will be deported. For students who live with undocumented family members, The trauma of a loved one being deported could be compounded with a student becoming homeless or facing other financial hardships due to the loss of that family member's income. Since Trump won the election, college administrations have been discussing what policies to expect and how they might choose to react. The president of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, for instance, has announced he intends to comply with ICE requests. The president of their own workplace, City College of New York, shared with the Faculty Senate that he is in a Project 2025 study group with other college presidents to discuss what to do. He has expressed interest in improving data security to protect immigrant students' information and refusing to cooperate with ICE and other agencies, but with certain limits. He thinks declaring the college a sanctuary campus promises more than he could deliver, especially in the context of a mayor who is cozying up to Trump, probably in hopes of receiving a pardon. Such a stance from the leader of a liberal public institution is not surprising. Many school districts are making the same pledge to only comply when presented with a warrant. But it is insufficient, and it highlights the limits of relying on institutions to protect vulnerable people from the attacks of the Trump administration. Responses, excuse me. Responses like their college professors stop at the limit of the law, and it is precisely changes to the law and to the practice and implementation of those laws that will place vulnerable students under greater threat from agents of the state. Previously, ICE and Customs and Border Protection were instructed not to operate at sensitive locations, such as schools, hospitals, and churches. Now there is a greater risk of these agencies operating on or near campus. What will happen if ICE agents enter campus with a warrant to inspect student documents or demand the school turn over student data? If the university won't defy their legal authority, it will be up to the students and workers to rally against them. And for that to be possible, students and workers need to organize in support of immigrants ahead of time. It's unreasonable to expect any one university staff member to refuse to comply in the moment without knowing that they have the support of their campus community. But a community that is organized and trying to respond to such attacks can mobilize people in defense, just as the large crowds of students and workers around the Columbia Gaza Solidarity encampment dissuaded the university from using the police to evict the second encampment for almost 2 weeks. We saw last April how mass community support is key for resisting state incursions, at least for a time. A staff member at the Barnard College resigned after being asked to accompany an evicted student professor to their room during the 15 minutes they were allotted to gather their things. Another Barnard staff organized a sick out that week. Workers at Columbia, SWMI, and the University of Texas at Austin also organized sickouts in protest of encampment repression. And graduate student workers at the University of California went on strike following both police and vigilante violence at the UCLA encampment. These job actions are an expression of growing student worker solidarity in the movement for Palestine and the result of the campus unionization movement of the past several years, which has been particularly pronounced among graduate student workers. Trump is in the process of orchestrating a new travel ban, and it seems likely that such a ban will dovetail with repression of students organizing for Palestine, many of whom are immigrants or come from immigrant families. While the encampment moment is over for now, campus organizing for Palestine is ongoing, and this movement must unite with other students and workers to fight to protect immigrant students and workers as well, building on the relationships forged last spring to make both movements stronger. As the new Trump administration begins its attacks, it's more important than ever to form a strong opposition, both on campus and off, that is capable of fighting back using working class methods, which can hit the bourgeoisie where it hurts the most. Unions must mobilize in defense of our students and colleagues side by side with student groups. Going into the new spring semester, students and higher education workers must demand no ICE on campus and that universities take up protecting vulnerable students in every way possible. But we also know that universities, as bourgeois institutions invested in the maintenance of stability, regardless of who's in power, which again, we've been seeing a lot of that lately, will never go that far unless their hands are forced. So we must organize as students and workers to protect our own against the far right and the government agencies deployed to enforce their policies. That was from Olivia Wood. They're a writer and editor at Left Voice and a lecturer in English at the City University of New York. That article was called ICE Off Campus, College Students and Workers Must Unite Against Right-Wing Attacks. We're going to take a quick little break. We come back. We have another piece kind of focused on the administration and how it is going to be impacting campus, campuses, campus dialogue, etc. Keep it dial locked. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WITR or online at widerfm.org. You could also find us online at Media Cyphers Kalamazoo Podcast. You can find that on most podcasting apps. And you can also find us on Facebook and YouTube. Keep your dial locked. We'll be right back. This is Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution. Hello again, everybody out there in radio land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. So next article kind of focuses again on the way that the Trump administration is going to try to, again, stuff all the bad bits of U.S. history in a memory hole and really try to propagandize the U.S. education system in this kind of like Disney-fied version of American history where nothing bad ever happened and all that other stuff. So this is an article from Jesse Hagopian. It's published on January 24th. Trump's education agenda for teachers: sanitize U.S. history or leave the field. Getting critical race theory out of our schools is not just a matter of values, it's also a matter of national survival. Donald Trump railed at a rally in the lead up to the 2024 election. This is more than just political theater. It's a clarion call to enforce, by any means necessary, what can only be called post-truth schooling, a system where ideological conformity replaces inquiry and objective truth as the foundation of education. Trump has made his second-term plans for a post-truth schooling clear. He vows to cut federal funding to schools that require vaccinations or that engage in discussions on topics such as race, gender, and sexuality. He seeks to drive out any educator from the profession who teaches these issues by creating a new credentialing body to certify teachers who embrace patriotic values. Trump describes his plan to control college accreditation as his secret weapon against quote-unquote critical race theory and pledged to tax, fine, and sue excessively large private university endowments to collect billions of dollars. We live in an era of post-truth schooling where historical realities have been outlawed and young people are being trained to accept that those who present honest accounts of the past should be punished. Nearly half of all children in the U.S. public school system are subject to laws requiring teachers to deny the reality of systemic racism. Florida's official state curriculum declares slavery was of personal benefit to Black people. The state even threatens teachers with prison for harboring banned books. It has also banned AP African American history. These laws aren't limited to quote-unquote red states. In California alone, these policies that ban teaching about systemic racism impact about 110,000 students at the local school district level. The American Library Association reported record censorship across the U.S., with over 4,200 book titles targeted for banning in 2023. Many educators have received death threats, and scores have been fired or pushed out for teaching about racism or gender identity. Fear of retribution has led two-thirds of teachers to self-censor on topics such as race, gender, and sexuality. While dubious debates over CRT are ubiquitous in today's political discourse, the real threat to education is uncritical race theory, the de facto philosophy underpinning post-truth schooling. Uncritical race theory is a term I've developed to describe systems of belief that deny or minimize the reality of systemic racism, ultimately reinforcing existing racial hierarchies of power. URT takes different forms: denying racism's existence outright, reframing it as an affliction suffered primarily by white people, or discarding systemic analysis in favor of simplistic narratives of individual bias. Often embraced by both liberals and conservatives, URT suggests that if individuals would simply stop acknowledging race and adopt a colorblind approach, racism would disappear, rendering anti racist education and efforts to dismantle institutional racism unnecessary or harmful. To fully grasp URT, we must look at its implementation. The right wing Civic Alliance's American Birthright curriculum, funded by deep pocketed ideologues, exemplifies how URT obscures history by weaving a gilded veil over the past to mask uncomfortable truths. The American Birthright Social Studies Standard states some educators are so caught up in pedagogical theory they've forgotten that facts come first. Some activists in our schools are so antagonist toward our culture without recognizing what they owe to it that they seek to erase our withered history of liberty from the curriculum. The uncritical race theorists at the Civics Alliance want to train youth to see the U.S.'s worthy history of liberty as the only natural and objective way to view history, while dismissing any critiques of racism as political or merely theoretical, ironically, only substituting their own political theory for the critical perspectives they reject. Uncritical race theorists demand a sanitized telling of history where the United States was delivered by the stork, and they would prefer students don't look any further into how the country was made, lest it offend delicate sensibilities. After all, many of the post truth schooling laws explicitly ban teaching anything that might cause discomfort. In the same breath that uncritical race theorists use to decry cancel culture, they call for the canceling of any book or educator, without even blushing, that diverges from the orthodoxy of American exceptionalism. Trump's education agenda, in line with Project 2025, a policy blueprint developed by the Heritage Foundation, seeks to cement these distortions and limit what students can learn about the United States past. During a June 2024 speech to the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Trump dismissed concerns about George Washington enslaving black people by claiming, they thought he had slaves. Actually, I think he probably didn't. Therein lies the essence of uncritical race theory, a calculated farce that prefers comforting delusions over the cotton picking truth that George Washington owned 123 enslaved black people, adding 153 to the household through his marriage to Martha. For Trump and his acolytes, dishonesty about U.S. history is essential because if students understood the country's foundation is genocide and enslavement, they might question today's unequal distribution of resources and power. At stake is not merely the lens through which we view our past, but the moral and intellectual foundation of the society we aspire to create. Post truth schooling, fueled by uncritical race theory, aims to dull the capacity of young people to think critically and challenge systemic inequality. For example, in the foreword to Project 2025, Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation calls for deleting terms such as diversity, equity, and inclusion, and sexual orientation and gender identity. This memory hole policy supports one of uncritical race theorists' primary goals to make teaching the truth about systemic racism and oppression impossible because there will be no one left who has learned it, and therefore no one will remain to teach it. Fortunately, resistance to this dystopian vision is springing up already. Parents, caregivers, educators, and students who still believe in critical thinking are empowering young people to ask bold questions and imagine a liberated future. Many thousands of educators are defying bans on honest education by practicing what Jarvis Givens has called fugitive pedagogy, teaching the truth about Black history. June 7th will mark the 5th annual National Teach Truth Day of Action, where hundreds of educators, students, and parents will rally around the country to oppose post-truth schooling and advocating for the teaching of honest accounts of history. In addition, Tiffany Mitchell Patterson, an educator in Washington, D.C., underscored the urgency of this fight when she signed the Zen Education Project's pledge to teach the truth, stating, "This road to freedom hinges on the youth knowing the raw and rugged truth about the systemic ills of this country. Through truth, our young people can imagine and fight for a new world where we are all free." Trump's campaign of lies during his first run contributed to the Oxford Dictionary declaring post-truth its word of the year in 2016. In 2025, let's work to ensure that resistance and not post-truth schooling becomes the defining term of our era. That was an op-ed from Truthout. It was written by Jesse Hagapian. Trump's education agenda for teachers: sanitize U.S. history or leave the field. We're going to take another quick little break. We come back. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Trump administration's efforts to dismantle public health and some of the implications that's going to have for the rest of us. Here, Dialogue, this is Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find us online at our Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast. You can find that on most podcasting apps. We are also on Facebook and YouTube. Keep your dial locked. This is Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution. Hello again, everybody. We're back. This is Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. I think the last full length article we're going to be hitting on before we kind of start wrapping things up is an article from the World Socialist website that's been kind of speaking to a lot of concerns that I've had, especially with Trump. Um, Again, pulling us out of the World Health Organization and also kind of putting a gag order on the health organizations that they can't communicate healthcare data to the public. This was published on January 23rd. It's written by Evan Blake. Trump declares all-out war on public health and science. In the first week of his return to power, Donald Trump has declared all-out war on science and public health as a core component of his fascist agenda in the service of the American oligarchy. The initial architect of a horrific herd immunity mass infection policy towards the COVID-19 pandemic, Trump is picking up where he left off 4 years ago and escalating far further. Trump has withdrawn the U.S. from the World Health Organization, imposed an unprecedented gag order on all 13 agencies that comprise the Department of Health and Human Services, and threatened to adjourn Congress to ensure that his numerous anti-public health nominees are installed through recess appointments. These reckless actions, only for a foretaste of what is to come, dramatically heighten the risk of future pandemics. At present, this danger emanates above all from the U.S., where the highly pathogenic avian influenza, that's H5N1 bird flu, has been spreading unchecked among poultry and dairy cattle for over a year, likely infecting hundreds of farm workers across the country due to the Biden administration's criminally negligent response. While Trump and his fascist allies are spearheading the attacks on science and public health, this policy does have bipartisan support. Just 3 days before Trump's inauguration, the Biden administration cut off all funding and formally debarred EcoHealth Alliance Incorporated for 5 years as part of the fascist led witch hunt of the organization's former head, Dr. Peter Daszak. Both capitalist parties support the eugenicist policy of lowering life expectancy and clawing back all of the social gains won by the working class in the 20th century. Alongside the destruction of public health, a central aim of the incoming administration is to gut all social spending, including plans to cut Medicaid by as much as $2.3 trillion. Already, Trump's orders are estimated to have revoked or affected health insurance for upwards of 20 million Americans. His renewed assault on public health began within hours of his inauguration. Among the flurry of executive orders signed Monday, which centered on attacking immigrants, reversing environmental protections, and erecting the scaffolding of a police state in the U.S., Trump also withdrew the U.S. from the World Health Organization. This move will have far-reaching consequences, as the U.S. supplies roughly 15% of the funding for the WHO, whose work is critical in tracking emerging infectious diseases and potential spillover events globally that could spark the next pandemic. Furthermore, once the withdrawal takes effect, the U.S. will no longer be obligated to report such outbreaks that occur domestically, effectively creating blackout conditions that will allow any and all pathogens to spread freely from the United States to other countries in the world. This blackout greatly endangers the American population as well. The following day, the Trump administration imposed the sweeping gag order upon all 13 HHS agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Institutes of Health, and other pivotal agencies that monitor, research, and report on infectious diseases. The order, which will last at least through the end of the month and potentially far longer, has vast implications. The CDC has suspended publication of all science reports, including on the spread of bird flu, the crucial morbidity and mortality weekly report, and reports on COVID-19 wastewater levels, among the last available data sources to track the spread of the ongoing pandemic. At present, the U.S. is mired in its 10th COVID-19 wave, with the most recent wastewater estimates indicating that over 500,000 Americans are being infected each day. Hospitals across the country are currently slammed with a quademic of patients infected with COVID-19, seasonal flu, and RSV and norovirus. An anonymous federal health official told the Washington Post that before the gag order was imposed, the CDC planned to publish several MMWR reports this week, including three pertaining to the H5N1 bird flu outbreak. The timing could not be worse. Last year, the U.S. reported 66 official bird flu cases, the second highest figure historically for any country. Due to inadequate testing, it is likely hundreds of cases that went undetected. For months, scientists have repeatedly warned of the growing danger that people could be infected at the same time by seasonal flu and bird flu. This co-infection could cause the reassortment of genes and enable bird flu, currently transmissible to humans only from infected animals and birds, to gain the seasonal flu's capability for human to human transmission. This evolutionary process could very well be taking place now without anyone knowing. And if such spread were to take place under Trump's new rules, no public health agency would be able to report it. I kind of just want to stop there and just bring some other facts to light. I'll link to the article so y'all can read the rest of it. But bird flu is no joke. Cases of bird flu in humans have been known to have up to a 50% mortality rate. Among pregnant women, it could be as high as 90%, not 9, not 19, 90%. If bird flu, H5N1, makes that jump, makes that mutation that will allow it to spread person to person, we are in for a pandemic of biblical proportions. And not only is there no one at the wheel, but even the people that are supposed to be informing us of these developments have been effectively told by the US government, you're not allowed to talk about it. So we are in the dark. We don't, right now, as I speak, the bird flu has spread to farms in Indiana. Roseacre Farms has said that their commercial egg production facility near Seymour has a positive test over the weekend for bird flu, which could impact up to 2.8 million birds. This is also why eggs are so expensive. Birds are getting sick by the thousands and are dying off before they can do eggs. I also wanted to talk, we were talking a little bit about ice earlier, and there's an important way these issues intersect. Many farm workers who work and do domestic poultry production are undocumented workers, again, because a lot of these farms exploit their labor to pay, cheap wages and such. Now, what's going to happen if these undocumented farmers get infected with bird flu? They're not going to seek treatment in the hospital because now ICE is allowed to go into hospitals and arrest undocumented people. This is a ticking time bomb and a powder keg, and it really is a lot of America's sins just coming together in the worst way. Some people have asked me, and I usually try to be very cheerful on the show about the capacity of working people to get together and organize, get a general strike, fight back against the system. This is something that genuinely scares me because it is a very deadly virus. The potential for it to mutate is higher than it's ever been before, given the information I just laid out. And we have a government that is going to deliberately keep us in the dark if and when, and it is honestly at this point looking more like when bird flu does mutate and starts infecting people person to person. It's highly contagious and highly deadly. I really just want to let everybody know out there, since the government is keeping us in the dark, we're going to keep as close tabs on it, on bird flu and these developments as we possibly can. At least try to give y'all a heads up if that mutation has happened, if it's starting. I'm going to warn you right now, egg prices are going to go through the roof. We might not be able to buy eggs soon, considering how fast bird flu is spreading. and don't hang out with chickens right now. Chickens or geese or anything. The again, our farm workers are very vulnerable right now to the bird flu, and there is a potential for it to spread in the human population. And it would make COVID-19 look like allergies, to be completely frank. I'm not trying to scare y'all unnecessarily, but bird flu is serious business, and the government is treating it in the most unserious way they possibly can. I recommend to all y'all, get a mask, get a KN95 mask. I'm starting to wear this again everywhere I go out in public. Just don't know. You just don't know. Um, and especially with this government that's going to be keeping us in the dark about this stuff deliberately, it is up to us to keep each other safe. N95 mask, wear it when you're out and about. Keep that hand sanitizer on you. Um, things are about to get real. Um, before I close out the show, I did want to at least address. I haven't taken a lot of time to address specifically kind of the transphobic stuff coming out of the administration, but I do want to at least remind my folks out there in the Michigan area that we live in Michigan, and we have the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act that was passed in 2023 that does still protect Michiganders' civil rights on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. We'll again, of course, keep tabs on this throughout the year. The Republicans in Lansing do have a majority right now. Whether they are going to pursue as draconian an agenda as the Trump administration does remain to be seen. But I do want my queer folks to know in the audience that here in the state of Michigan, we do still have civil rights protections for queer folks under the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up the show. I'm going to thank you all again for listening. This has been Media Cyphers. And again, this is the legacy media is failing us. We've got to get the hard truths out to one another. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends. That's how we get this information out. We don't advertise on Facebook anymore because again it's been taken over by the fascists. So really, word of mouth. If you like what we're doing, please spread the word. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube. I know, ironically enough, Facebook, but I mean, that's where the people are at. We got to stay there. Um, and you can also find the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast on most podcasting apps. Electropop Therapy is next up at 2. Keep your dial locked. This has been Media Cyphers. And everybody out there, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.